The moment Sierra Donnelly saw the young cowboy slumped in his saddle at her ranch gate, something inside her shifted like dry earth meeting rain after years of drought. She had spent 15 long years locked away behind her own walls, living quiet and alone, tending her land with the steady patience of a woman who believed life had already given her everything it ever would. But that July evening in 1887, the wind carried more than dust across the Double D Ranch. It carried change. Sierra was 58 years old, strong in spirit and steady in her ways. She owned more land than half the ranchers in Montana Territory combined, though no one in Cedar Ridge knew the true extent of it. They only saw a widow who worked hard, lived modest, and kept to herself. Her white ranch house stood weathered by years of storms, the porch steps sagging, the shutters rattling in every strong wind. She wore simple cotton dresses and mended her own stockings. To the world, she looked like a woman who had accepted her solitude. Inside, her heart had simply learned how to stay quiet. That day had been like any other. She had returned from town with her supplies, unloaded the wagon, and worked in her vegetable garden until her back ached and the sun dipped low. The tomatoes were splitting on the vines. The beans hung heavy, begging to be picked. Her life was full of work, but empty of someone to share it with. She felt the weight of it more each year. As she walked toward the house, she saw movement near the front gate. A lone rider approached slowly, his posture slumped, his horse weary. Instinct sharpened her senses. Out here, unexpected visitors meant trouble more often than company. When he drew close enough, Sierra could see the man looked no older than 30. His hat sat low over tired eyes, and blood darkened the front of his shirt. Even from a distance, she could tell he was holding himself together by sheer will. Sierra set down her basket and walked forward, her boots crunching over gravel. "Sir, are you injured?" The cowboy lifted his head, meeting her gaze with eyes full of pain and exhaustion. "Ma'am," he said, his voice thin and rough, "I'm sorry to trouble you. I just need water for me and my horse." Up close, Sierra saw the tremble in his hands. The blood on his shirt had dried, but the wound was fresh. His face was pale beneath the dirt and stubble, and his breath came shallow. The man was hurt worse than he was willing to admit. "You're wounded," she said calmly. "Just a scratch." His tired smile almost fooled her. Sierra had lived too long on the frontier to be fooled easily. She opened the gate. "Dismount. You're coming inside so I can look at that wound." The cowboy hesitated, torn between pride and exhaustion. "Ma'am, I don't want to impose."
"You're already here," Sierra said in a tone that allowed no argument.
"Now come inside." The young man slid off his horse, his legs buckling. Sierra caught his elbow before he fell. His weight was solid, his body trembling from more than just fatigue. "Name?" she asked as she helped him toward the house. "Blake," he said quietly. "Blake Harrington." She guided him into the kitchen, the warm light wrapping around them both. Her stew simmered on the stove, filling the air with a comforting scent. Sierra sat him at the table and set to work cleaning the wound. It was a deep graze along his ribs, a bullet that had come too close for comfort. "Been in a gunfight?" Sierra asked gently. Blake nodded. "My first. I hope my last." Sierra wrapped the bandage tightly around his ribs. "Gunfights change a man." "So I'm told," Blake murmured. He drank the coffee she placed in front of him, both hands wrapped around the cup like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. She watched the tension leave his shoulders slowly, like a man thawing after a long winter. "Where were you headed?" Sierra asked. "Away," he said simply. "Nowhere in particular. Running doesn't fix everything." "I know, but staying would have meant trouble. The man I shot had friends." Sierra nodded once. Frontier justice was a hard road. Sometimes a man had no choice but to leave the dust of a bad day behind him. "You'll stay the night," she said. "I shouldn't. Not with trouble on my trail. I'm not afraid of trouble." Blake studied her face. The firm jaw, the steady eyes, the strength of a woman who had weathered life's hardest blows and stood tall. "Why are you helping me?" Sierra paused. The honest answer was simple. He was the first man to sit at her table in years. The sound of his voice filled a quiet she had grown too used to. "Because you need help," she said. "And I have room." Blake nodded, humbled. "I'll work to earn my keep while I'm here." Sierra allowed the smallest smile. This ranch could use a good pair of hands. A shutter banged loose in the wind outside. Blake flinched, instinctively reaching for a gun that wasn't at his side. "Easy," Sierra said softly. "Just the wind." The look in his eyes told her he was running from more than a single gunfight. He was running from fear, grief, and things he couldn't speak aloud. She handed him a bowl of stew. "Eat." He ate like a starving man, every bite bringing color back to his cheeks. Later, when Sierra showed him to the guest room upstairs, Blake paused. "Ma'am, thank you. I'm not used to kindness. Get some sleep." Morning comes early on a working ranch. That night, as she lay in her bed listening to the storm outside, Sierra found herself thinking about the young cowboy sleeping down the hall. Something about him stirred a part of her heart she thought had been put away for good. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. Rain fell steady the next morning, drumming softly on the ranch house roof as Sierra moved through her kitchen with a quiet sense of expectation. She had risen before dawn, as always, but today felt different. For the first time in many years, she was not alone in her home. The knowledge warmed her like the first sunlight after a long Montana winter. She glanced toward the guest room door at the top of the stairs. No sound, no footsteps. A sharp worry pricked her chest. Had Blake left already? Had he slipped away before she could make sure he was truly healed? But when she looked out the kitchen window, she froze. Blake was in the barnyard, moving carefully but steadily, a pail in each hand. He had milked her cows, without being asked, without a word, and now walked toward the barn to feed the horses. Rain dripped from the brim of his hat, his shirt damp but his posture sure. For a moment, Sierra simply watched him, something warm and unexpected blooming in her chest. She had not realized how empty her mornings had been until she saw a man working her land with steady hands and quiet purpose. When Blake stepped into the kitchen, he paused politely at the door, hat in hand. "Morning, Sierra. Hope I didn't overstep." "You figured it out," Sierra said with a small smile. "Wash up. Breakfast is ready." As they ate, she found herself stealing glances at him. In daylight, Blake looked younger than she remembered. His shoulders were broad, his features strong. But there was a gentleness in his eyes that softened the roughness of his life on the trail. He moved carefully, testing his ribs, but the pain no longer controlled him. After breakfast, Blake stood to help with the dishes. "I told you I'd earn my keep." Sierra dried plates beside him, their hands brushing now and then. Each small touch sent a quiet thrill through her. She had spent so long without the warmth of another person near her that even this simple moment felt new and fragile. "You've done honest work," Sierra said, "but that wound needs time." He nodded. "I'll take it slow, but I'd like to help where I can." They spent most of the morning checking the cattle together. Blake rode with the easy grace of a man who grew up in the saddle. He studied the herd with practiced eyes, noticing details some ranchers missed. Sierra found herself impressed by his quiet knowledge, his thoughtful questions, and the calm way he moved among her animals. "This herd is strong," Blake said as they rode back toward the barn. "You've done good work here." "It's been years of hard labor," Sierra replied, "mostly alone." Blake's voice softened. "It doesn't have to stay that way." The words hung between them like a warm breath in the cold air. In the barn, as they unsaddled the horses, Sierra felt the first crack in the guarded walls she had built around herself. She turned toward Blake to thank him for his help, but the words caught in her throat when she found him already watching her. He stepped closer, close enough that Sierra could feel the warmth of him even in the cool barn air. "Sierra," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." She swallowed. "What is it?" "I haven't felt welcome anywhere in a long time. Not like I feel here." The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache. You do belong here, Sierra said quietly. For as long as you want to stay. Blake moved closer. Close enough that Sierra could see every fleck of color in his dark eyes. Sierra, I don't want to presume anything. You're strong and you're kind and... But what? Sierra whispered. Blake hesitated, searching her face. Then, with a gentle courage that made him look younger and older all at once, he reached out and touched her cheek. The warmth of his fingers sent a tremor through her entire body. She had not been touched with tenderness in so many years that she almost forgot how it felt. Blake's touch awakened something deep inside her heart, something she had tried to bury. Blake, she whispered. He leaned in, giving her time to turn away, to stop him, to end the moment before it grew into something neither of them could ignore. Sierra didn't move. Their lips met in a soft, searching kiss. Warm, hesitant, full of the surprise and hunger of two people who had lived too long without being seen. Sierra gripped Blake's shirt, holding him close, her heart pounding with the fragile joy of the moment. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Don't apologize, Sierra whispered before he could speak. Don't take this moment away from me. Blake smiled, a warm expression that reached his eyes. I wasn't planning to, not for anything. Rain pattered softly against the barn roof as they stood there, holding on to something neither had expected, but both needed more than they understood. The next 3 days passed with a quiet ease Sierra had never known before. Blake worked beside her repairing fences, tending cattle, and handling chores she had long struggled to do alone. His presence filled every empty space in her home. Every quiet corner seemed warmer with him in it. On the third night, Blake sat across from Sierra at the kitchen table after dinner. He looked nervous, hopeful, and determined all at once. Sierra, he began, I want to stay longer, not just until the weather clears. I want to work for you properly. I want to help you run this place. Sierra's hands went still. Blake, I can't pay a hired hand. I'm not asking for pay, Blake said firmly. I'm asking for a place to belong. Her breath caught. Her heart trembled. And Sierra, Blake's voice softened, I care about you more than I've cared about anyone in a long time. Sierra felt her heartbeat echo in her throat. She didn't answer right away. Instead, her eyes drifted down to the worn wood of the table. She had lived alone for so long, trusted no one for so long. Opening her heart again felt dangerous, risky. But sitting across from Blake, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Before she could answer, Blake reached across the table and took her hand in his. Let me stay, he said gently. Let me prove that I mean everything I've said. Sierra looked up, her eyes shining. All right, she whispered. You can stay. Blake smiled. Bright, genuine, relieved. And Sierra felt something warm and powerful open inside her heart. A new beginning. One she did not see coming. The days that followed were some of the happiest Sierra Donnelly had known since her husband passed 15 years earlier. Blake settled into life on the Double D Ranch as if he had been born to it. He repaired the broken front steps, rebuilt a sagging section of the barn wall, and worked the cattle with quiet skill. Wherever Sierra looked, she saw signs of his presence. Tools neatly arranged, fences straightened, chores finished before she even noticed they needed doing. More than anything, she felt his presence in the warmth returning to her home. There was laughter at the breakfast table again. Footsteps on the porch. A second coffee cup washed and set to dry beside hers. It startled her sometimes how quickly she grew used to it. But she also felt something deeper. Something she was almost afraid to name, and she could see the same feeling growing in Blake's eyes each time he looked at her. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat together on the porch, watching the crazy mountains turn gold in the fading light. Blake leaned back in his chair, quiet for a long moment, before finally speaking. Sierra, he said softly, I want to ask you something, and I hope you hear it the way I mean it. She turned toward him, her heart tightening. Go ahead. Blake's voice was steady, but a hint of fear hid beneath the words. I want to build a life here, with you. Not as a hired hand, not as a guest, as someone who's found the one place in the world that finally feels like home. Sierra's breath caught. She gripped the arms of her chair. Blake, you're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. My life has never been better than it is here, he said, because of you. She looked away, overwhelmed. I'm 28 years older than you. You should be with someone your own age, with a future ahead of her. Sierra, Blake said gently, reaching for her hand, my future is right here. With you. Her heart hammered so loudly she thought he might hear it. He lowered his voice. I'm not asking for anything fancy. I'm asking for you. For us. For a chance to build something real. Sierra closed her eyes. The wind brushed her hair. Somewhere in the barn, a horse stamped softly in the quiet. Blake's thumb brushed her knuckles, gentle and certain. Blake, she whispered, I care about you. More than I expected. More than I thought I could again. But no, he said softly, shaking his head. No more buts. Not tonight. Not when we've both worked too hard to find something good. And then he said something that melted the last of her resistance. I'm falling in love with you, Sierra Donnelly. I didn't plan on it, and I sure didn't expect it. But I am. The word struck her like a warm wind, sweeping across frozen land. She stared at him, stunned, moved, shaken to her core. Blake. Her voice trembled. Please take it easy. I haven't been cared for in years. He smiled, a soft, warm, understanding smile that reached straight into her heart. Then I'll take my time. The quiet around them deepened, not empty but full. Sierra felt something inside her shift, an old lock turning, a door opening after years of silence. That night changed everything. The following morning, Sierra woke with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. Blake was already outside working, his voice carrying across the yard as he spoke to the horses. Sierra brewed coffee and opened the back door, just to hear him better. Their new closeness showed in 100 small ways. The soft glances, the shared smiles, the gentle touches when passing tools or pouring coffee. Sierra felt younger, steadier, more alive, but life has a way of testing the things worth keeping. One afternoon, Blake came in from the barn carrying an old leather satchel he'd found in a forgotten storage room. Sierra, he said, voice uneasy, this was behind the grain sacks. You know anything about it? Sierra froze. Inside the satchel were deed papers, bank documents, and gold. More wealth than most people in the territory would ever see. Blake stared at the contents, his face pale. Sierra, just how rich are you? She swallowed. Very. Blake set the satchel down like it weighed 1,000 pounds. You own half the county. Blake, I didn't tell you because... Because what? He asked, hurt sharpening his voice. Because you didn't trust me? Because you thought I'd treat you different? Sierra stepped toward him. Because every man before you wanted my money more than they wanted me. Blake paced the kitchen, hands running through his hair. How am I supposed to match this? What do I bring into your life that you can't buy 10 times over? Your heart, Sierra said fiercely. Your presence. Your strength. That's what I want. He stopped walking. And then, without another word, he left. For 3 days, Sierra worked the ranch alone again. The silence felt heavier than ever. She realized now how much Blake had changed her home just by being in it. On the 4th day, Blake's horse wandered back without him. Fear shot through her like lightning. She rode to town, found him in the saloon, unshaven and exhausted, staring into a half-empty glass. Blake, she said softly, sliding into the chair across from him, come home. I don't belong beside a woman like you. Yes, she whispered. You do, I don't know how. Then learn with me. He looked up then, truly looked, and Sierra saw it in his eyes, the same pain she had carried for years.
Anne, guys, lied. The Coxes continued back in the town.
The pain of believing you're not enough. She reached for his hand. You are the man I choose. Rich or poor doesn't matter. Pride doesn't matter. Love matters. Blake swallowed hard. Sierra, will you still have me, even if I'm stubborn and scared and unsure of the future? Especially then. He let out a breath that shook. Then I'm yours, and I'm coming home. They married 2 weeks later under a sky painted gold by autumn. Half the town gathered, though most had never truly known Sierra until Blake came along. She wore her mother's wedding dress. Blake wore a suit that fit him like someone who finally knew where he belonged. After the ceremony, Blake leaned close and whispered, "You saved my life, Sierra Donnelly, not by pulling me from danger, but by giving me something worth living for." Sierra felt tears warm her cheeks. "And you reminded me that a heart doesn't stop blooming just because it's forgotten a season."